Welcome, Małgorzata Bonikowska, the Center for International Relations. Welcome to our Zoom the World talk, lasting this year, 2021, the year full of very many difficult situations all over the world. One of them is the situation in Ethiopia, which is exactly the topic of our conversation today. Actually, from our European perspective, Polish perspective, we used to see Ethiopia as a relatively stable country, but something somehow went wrong somewhere in this country. And we have a civil war, we have huge tension in the country. It has been over a year. So we try to understand what's behind this tragedy today. Let us welcome our guests. Let's start with Dr. Eva Wołk-Sore. Good morning.
Good morning.
Eva is working at the Warsaw University at the Department of African Languages. So he specializes in the language of Ethiopia, in languages of this country. But she's also married to an Ethiopian and having a child. So very much family connection in this case. Thank you for agreeing of being with us. Viktor Marsai. Hello, Viktor.
Hello.
Viktor works at University of Public Services in Budapest, but also he's working as a researcher in Migration Research Institute, and he does research on African countries, especially Ethiopia. And finally, Mersha Woldu. Hello, Mersha.
Hello, Mersha.
Mersha, you are a president of an association of Ethiopian-Polish association. So it's an association addressed to all the Ethiopians who live in Poland. Yes. You yourself live in Poland has been over 30 years.
Yes.
I hope also you give us a perspective of the Ethiopians now living outside and looking at the situation in the country. So let me start maybe with Viktor, because your recent research concerns this country. If you can explain us the beginning, because we remember quite well that not so many years ago, in 2018, if I remember correctly, the Prime Minister of Ethiopia got a Nobel Prize in peace for resolving the problem with Eritrea. What happened really after that, and why the civil war started?
Yes. I think if we want to understand the current situation, we should go back much earlier to the 1991 period, or after the 1991 period, when after the fall of the Derg regime, the socialist dictatorship in Ethiopia, the question raised how they can hold together a country. And in Ethiopia, we can see a constant dynamics between centralization and then the fight of the peripheries to get more autonomy. And during the Derg regime, one of the main reasons why the country fell back to the civil war, and thanks to the civil war, starvation, was a constant struggle between the centralization efforts of the Mengistu regime in the fights of the, let's say, peripheries.
Derg regime, which you refer to the events from 1991? When there was
it's in the 80s, But what was the idea of the new Ethiopia? That after this strong centralization, established a federal system and called ethnic federalism to provide autonomy to the different ethnic groups in the country, forming regional states, or region as it's called in the Ethiopian constitution, and provided, for example, Amhara state, Tigray state, Afar state, Somali states, etc., etc. And instead of a concept of a strong central authority which controls the whole country as, let's say, an empire, as it was during the time of Haile Selassie and Mengistu, the concept was to lead the country in the line of these federal member states and the federal authority. So it was the concept behind the modern Ethiopia. But actually what happened on the ground was that only one party, the so-called Tigrinya People Liberation Front and the TPLF controlled most federal authorities. And in spite of the other political parties that participated in the government, the big umbrella government called EPRDF, many Ethiopians felt that actually they were captured by the TPLF. In the 90s and early 20s, a huge development efforts happened in the country, which supported the development of Ethiopia. And thanks to these, people were more or less satisfied, or they accepted this dominance of TPLF. But by the mid of the 2010 years, mainly after 2015, more and more demonstrations started, because other groups, mainly the Oromos, but also other people, Amharas, Afar, Somalis, felt that they have no possibilities to have any voice in the system. And actually it led to an internal transformation within the EPRDF. Then the other parties of the EPRDF pushed an agenda to make a change, and it led establishment of a new EPRDF leadership with Abiy Ahmed, which was highly opposed by the TPLF because TPLF lost its power.
So to understand correctly from what you're saying, this kind of federalization of the country didn't help. On the other way around, it was the reason, the starting point of these tensions, and even the fact that a person from Oromo group didn't really change the perception. Mersha, I want you to comment on that, because you are an Ethiopian and you remember yourself, you know, the past. Would you agree that this was really the beginning of a problem, this federalization of the country?
Well, in my opinion, the problem began when, as my friend told us, forming of ethnic division in the country was a problem. There was no...
They were always there. I mean, Ethiopia was always...
But it was administration division of the country, but not ethnic division. So this region formed by an ethnic region, the problem came there. And of course, with the political agitation of the Tigran, the TPLF, not Tigran, I'm sorry, the TPLF party, that each tribe should take care of his land, and he is ruling there. So this brought a problem that when Amhara lives in the Oromo region, they began to tell him, this is not your land, so you have to go. Then.
So it's like federalization, which led into a fragmentation of the country, which was earlier centralized.
Exactly.
It had a very long history, because we all remember that Ethiopia had a very long history of statehood.
Yes, that's right. In my opinion, still what I can say is, I don't know if we find 5 to 10% of an Ethiopian citizen who can say that he is a very clean Amhara from his ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
It would be very problem, because we are all mixed. Nobody thought about where you come from. The only important point was he's an Ethiopian and we live together. So Amhara made a family with Oromo, with Tigray. It was not a problem. So that government, the TPLF party, brought that division, ethnic division, which was the source of the problem. Now, if you analyze the Ethiopian situation, all conflicts which have been during that TPLF government, in every region there was war between people, between individuals, between groups.
There was war. You mean there was
actually fighting conflicts between Amhara and Oromo with another ethnic group. But there was no one such conflict in Tigray province. Mm-hmm. Nothing. No conflict in Tigray province, because their plan was, actually it came out later, to divide the country in ethnic and rule. This law, divide and rule. So this problem rose very intensive, serious, and this was actually their aim. And they didn't plan or think that they would leave the government. When,
so you were saying that this was it was an attempt to really prolong being in power. This was a method.
exactly,
To,
that was it.
okay,
So,
before we go into that, and I will get back to Viktor, I want to ask Eva. Eva, Ethiopia is a very big country by population, by size as well. We are talking about 115 million, if I remember correctly.
yes.
And you are an expert of not only language, but the cultures of these ethnical groups. Could you just give us a picture? When we say Ethiopia, what do we have in mind? What kind of, how many tribes, how many languages, how many ethnical groups?
Thank you. Ethnic groups in Ethiopia, there are about 90, which is a very multicultural country. But in the history of Ethiopian Empire, there were two ethnic groups that were most important, which was Amhara and Tigray culture. And they created this core of Ethiopian culture, which is called Amhara-Tigrayan culture, which lies at the core of Ethiopian culture. For the most of the history, the Ethiopian Empire occupied the place of Abyssinian highlands, and it's only at the end of the 19th century, the beginning of the 20th century, that Menelik II he expanded the territory of Ethiopia into the south. And that's why those many ethnic groups found themselves in the borders of the Ethiopian Empire. So the situation is really complicated and intricate. And I think the roots of the conflict lie much, much deeper. Because, as I said, the culture is the core of the culture, Ethiopian culture, was consisted of Amhara and Tigrayan, and they had this origin. But the ruling group was, for the most of the period, was the Amhara. So the Tigrayans might have felt marginalized in the history.
Of course, we remember from history also that Ethiopia was one of these countries, very, very few places in Africa, which was actually almost never colonized. The Italians tried, but it just happened for a few years, the invasion. So this, this tradition of huge, strong state is very much there. Recently, Ethiopia was seen also as a kind of a stable country to that extent that many European companies, also Polish companies, invested in Ethiopia, had businesses, started operations. In Polish case, it was Ursus, it was Asseco doing business there. So the question, of course, is now what is happening and how this influences, I guess it influences very severely the operations, current operations from Ethiopia. So Viktor, if you can tell us a little bit more about this war and the whole, you know, the set of events which happens recently during last year, 1 year.
Yeah, thank you, Małgorzata. Before it, I just a very small addition, and I promise after it I will be more disciplined. But what Mr. Mersha mentioned, it's very important to understand, not only because of Ethiopia, but actually all African states, that what the demarcation of these border lines meant. You know, actually it crystallized and strengthened ethnic identity, because if people are just living together according, let's say, some ethnic identity, which is not belong to states, it's easy to, relatively much easier to live together, because, for example, they are using commonly the wells, the grazing lands, the areas, because they belong to some authority of the tribes, clans, ethnic groups, but it belongs to the people, not and it doesn't belong to the land. if you established a territory, decided that it only for Amharas, it only for Somalis, it means that no more, that identity belongs to the land, not to the ethnic group. So it means that what Mr. Mersha mentioned, okay, for centuries, people live together without any debate. Okay, always there are debates where people live together, but there was no debate that, okay, this village is Oromo, this village is Somali, or mixed. It was not a problem. But if you drive a borderline that no, this belongs to Oromia, then people started to think that, oh, if it's Oromia, it's for the Oromos. Then this well is for Oromos. Why Somalis is using it?
So you are saying it's a little bit very good, I mean, important point for Europeans as well, because it's inside Ethiopia. From what you said, they create a kind of national zones where the ethnical groups started to feel that they own it. So they should really get rid of the others, maybe, or take control of. So it's very much into these tensions, which didn't happen earlier in the empire, right? That's exactly what you want to say.
Yeah, and you know, this is the big contradiction, which is very hard to solve as a constant problem to Ethiopia, because whether you start to build up an Ethiopian nation, where there's no ethnic groups, just one Ethiopia, one Ethiopian identity, which is rejected the other people, what Eva mentioned, the Somalis, who feel that they were, it's very important, and they're using this term, it's very important, they felt they were colonized by the Amhara and the Tigrinyans during this occupation. So it's very, this is big contradiction in Ethiopian history, whether build up a common Ethiopian nation, but peripheral people say, no, because it's not Ethiopia, it's Amhara, Tigrinya, or let's say together Habasha culture. We don't want this.
So in case of Ethiopia, it's very interesting that, which is rare in the African continent, that this kind of divisions are not created by the colonial powers. We are talking about inside the country, the people themselves, right?
Yes, or you know, many Somalis and Afars say that, no, Abyssinian was who colonized us, not Europeans, but other Afars, you know. And I don't want to decide this issue, it's narratives, but it's very vivid narratives within the country. And, you know, the concept in ethnic federalism was that during their regime, which tried to build up Ethiopia and Ethiopian identity, it failed, or they failed, it's failed. So the idea was then give identity and land for the other groups. But now we see that the same happening, what happened in the Ethiopian level, in the state level, that now we see in local level that Amhara is building that, oh, it's Amhara land, Oromos, it's Oromo land, it's Somali land, and pushing other from this out from these areas.
I see that Mersha wants to comment.
Well, we shouldn't forget what was happening in Ethiopia before. As I told you, everyone, all Ethiopians, of course, Oromo, Amhara, Tigray, whatever, they lived together. Nobody raised such questions because it was not important. So now I can give you an example. In Poland, there are a couple of, tribes, so I can say Kashub, Śląsk, whatever. If a Kashub person from north goes to the south of Poland and begins his life, is it fair that the people there tells him that go out, this is not your land? This is not the case. The case was when Mengistu, actually I ran away from my country during this government and came to Poland.
We are talking about the 80s, right?
Yes, that's right. So I ran away because the system pressed me to belong to this party, which I didn't like. So I ran away. That was the only choice I have. So when Mengistu left, the government, the people, I can say, the people wanted someone to rule this country. So Mengistu fought with this TPLF because of their radical and very ethnical aim of the plan to liberate Tigray. Tigray people didn't want that. They don't want that. They want to live in peace. That's it. And Tigray people are, I can say, one of the most, pressed, forgotten people. Having the government of Ethiopia from their land, they lived a very terrible and poor life because the government, the TPLF, didn't care about this, about these people, his own people, as he said. So telling about people who are telling this is a Somaliland, Amhara land, whatever, this has no issue before. Who brought this? The TPLF party brought this. Why? To divide and rule the country. And finally, their aim was to liberate or to separate Tigray and make a state. That was their plan.
Okay, so that led to this civil war. And Viktor, coming back to my question, please just tell us what really happened, how the war started, and where we are now.
Yes, actually, what happened that TPLF managed to build a real deep state in Ethiopia since 1991. And in 2018, they felt that they had to step back a little bit because they felt otherwise there'll be a full civil war. And in the civil war, they will be very bad position because everybody was against them. And then Abiy Ahmed came with some Oromo ancestors, but also Amharic. Actually, he's a very, it's very important what Mr. Mersha and Eva mentioned, that, you know, identity and is very mixed, and in most time of the history, it was not the case whether you are Amharic or other people, because there are relatively mixed, even religious identity, because the father of Abiy Ahmed is a Muslim, but the mother is a Neo-Protestant. So it's absolutely work.
Abiy is the one who is a prime minister and who got this Nobel Prize in Peace. But I still don't understand what happened after he resolved the problem in Eritrea, because everybody was expecting, you know, more peace, not the war after that.
Yes, but you know, it was a structural issue, because TPLF knew exactly that the biggest challenges of the country is economic challenges, the mushrooming youth, unemployed population, and this ethnic issue, what Mr. Mersha mentioned, that was sometimes systematically pushed to divide the country. Abiy came, huge honeymoon. Everybody was very, very happy that he arrived, speaking about peace, making the agreement with Eritrea, making consolidation with Somalia, let democratic people, let the opposition who was previously declared terrorists by the TPLF, now they were let to come back to the country and participate in political life. But besides, during this period, TPLF systematically stoked, after 2018, ethnic tensions. They send weapons to Somalis, Afars, the radical part of Oromos, who was even not satisfied with Abiy, because Abiy said he serves Ethiopia, not the Oromos. Many Oromo was dissatisfied. They said, no, it's the time of the Oromos to capture the whole state. Abiy said, no, we are Ethiopians, not Oromos. No more ethnic federalism. This is the reason why he dissolved this EPRDF and now called it Prosperity Party to forget this whole ethnic line and build a better Ethiopian nation. But the elite of TPLF wanted to go back to the power. They systematically prepared for the comeback. And they knew that the structural challenges that I mentioned, economic and these deep systematically stoked ethnic tensions, will jeopardize the power of Abiy. And what happened in 2020 was actually the TPLF felt that, okay, the time arrived to come back to power. And this is why they started the war.
All right, if you can just give us now the background, how the people of Ethiopia are positioned in this conflict, because we are talking about game of power. We are talking about, you know, politicians who in a way use momentum to start a fight. But what about the people, and how do people feel now about these divisions, and what are the expectations?
People are also very divided because some are ardent supporters of Abiy Ahmed, and they think that he's an angel that was sent by God to save the country. And the others, on the other hand, they opposing him. So. Of course, there is this narrative in the media that, especially from the Tigray, from the TPLF, they call him a fascist. They call him a dictator. And of course, the public opinion is, the world public opinion, we can feel that is taking the Tigrayans' side.
You mean the narrative of Tigray is more spread out in the news of the Western world, right?
That's what I feel, yes. And they also accuse him of genocide, that he wants to wipe out Tigrayans from the surface of the earth. That's what they. It's not of course, the narrative of the Tigrayan people. It's the narrative of TPLF. That's what we can hear in the media.
But do we really know what is happening in the country? What are the sources of information from where we are able to, monitor the situation?
I think that there's mostly misinformation and propaganda from both sides, because on the other hand, the government sources are calling the other side they call the enemy, and also the junta. That's what we hear only in the media. I mean, I'm talking about Amharic speaking.
So they are accusing the government to take over power by force, or keep power by force, and implementing, let's say, army dictatorship.
Yes, but the junta is the name for the TPLF. So it's the former junta. I mean, in a way, the former junta that is trying to regain power now in Ethiopia.
And what about the army position? How far really the military operation, the physical force is engaged? We know that it's a civil war, of course, but is the army used against the people? Can we prove that they are, examples of, if not genocide, but at least, force and massive killing during this war?
We were observing for the most part of the, I think, the war. The government army was in the offense. Defense, defense. And only this week, Abiy Ahmed decided to join the. He went to the war front, and many people joined him. And recently, the schools were closed for a week for the teachers and also pupils to join the campaign. There's a big campaign now. Offensive war started.
Mersha, of course, you may have a slightly different narrative to tell us, but if from your perspective, you can describe us the beginning of the war and also, what has happened during this operation.
How the war started, this is a big question, a good question. One thing we should know is we are all away from this war or from this conflict, right? What we do is we listen to different from different sources. From what I do is I call and talk with different people in Ethiopia and try to find what the truth is. I have some friends from the press. Also, I ask them difficult questions. So what you can say is, in my opinion, why the war started. The war shouldn't have started. If a political party loses trust of the people, of the majority, the normal thing is to go back and try to convince the people to come back if they want, right? What the TPLF wanted is not, we shouldn't mix here the Tigrayan people or whatever. Tigrayan people do not have anything with this problem. They are very, actually, the TPLF uses this name, we Tigres, whatever. It's not true. So the TPLF, when it loses, it lost the power, as they call it, they are democratic republican, whatever, you know. This is also only theory. When they lost the power, what they did was they having all that security, the military, 90% of the military from their people. What they did was they moved every important thing to Tigray province, to Mekelle. Even the military equipments, all security equipments, the money, what they had, they went back to Tigray and they didn't want to talk to anybody. So Abiy tried with the parliament decision, tried to talk to them, to come to some to a table and discuss and come to some peace. They rejected 2 trials from what I know. The first one, they didn't want even to talk to them. The second, they are, as an Ethiopian tradition, usually we old people from church respected these people. We send as mediators. So the second time they went, from what I heard, is they didn't allow them to go down from the plane. So the plane filled and went back to Addis Ababa. So what they did was Abiy wanted to postpone the election due to COVID 1 year, and TPLF said no, this is not according to the law, the country law. We'll do our own election without you. This is a kind of separation. Wherever you are, if the central government, the parliament decided something, you have to respect it. There started the problem. They elected their own people. They declared, in other words, they declared as a free state, the Tigrayans. So they elected the president, and they didn't want to talk to anybody. And they began a conflict with the army, which has been actually securing Ethiopia, and at the same the Tigray people.
So you mean that this was also very much the reaction of the government and Abiy Ahmed to a possible defragmentation of the territory? I mean, even a split.
This was not in the law. Nobody thinks about separation of Tigray or Amhara, whatever. No, they wanted to live together. That was actually the main aim of the government and the people. So in such a way, they showed that they are not abiding the rule of the government, the central government. Then they started to attack the military. You heard about Mike Kadra's assassination in Humara. They actually began to kill people without a reason, just because you are another ethnic group. So the government cannot look at this when the army is murdered in hundreds of them. So the country, the government cannot look at this simply and try to negotiate with them. The only thing is to go and apply law enforcement. That's how it began.
Right. Okay. Eva, if you can just add one more level to that. Is the religious aspect in any way dividing people in Ethiopia? It doesn't matter really today, because Ethiopia has this very long tradition of being Christian. And you know, everyone who goes to Ethiopia from Europe knows that there are beautiful places to visit, the churches. So how would you describe this religious factor, if this is at stake at all, or?
I don't think the religious factor is important. What I'm concerned is that Tigray is situated at the core of Christian, where the beginning of Christianity and also Islam was introduced in this country on this territory, and there are many witnesses of this old events, like rock-hewn churches in Tigray, and I'm worried that, like Lalibela, for instance, and I'm worried that it might got destroyed in this war. But up to now, nothing like this happened. But I don't think there is a religious issue.
I'm asking also because in many African countries, it's exactly what the key problem, also the religious divisions. And in Ethiopia also, despite the Christian tradition, we have some minorities of different religion, mostly Muslim, but also, you know, the tribes on the south. Then let me go back to Viktor. Viktor, what are the scenarios? How to get out of this civil war? What could be really a solution? Taking into consideration that Ethiopia is also a headquarters in Addis Ababa, we have a headquarters of African Union, the organization which is composed of all the African states. And of course, the European Union, the US, and you know, the whole international community is looking at the situation, trying to diplomatically trying to work out some way out.
Well, it's a complex issue. I think I will start it, and Eva and Mersha will continue and make the addition, because yeah, there are many lines in the story. I think the first important what happened, and it's a real tragedy, that I completely agree with Mersha that it was not an ethnic issue at the beginning. It was the fight of the elites, mainly the TPLF elite, who knew exactly these old guys that the story for them is over. Their only possibility is to come back to power to initiate a war. It was clear. And this is why Abiy, since the beginning, communicated that it's not a war against the Tigrayans, it's not a war against Tigray, it's not a war, it's a law enforcement operation, because actually this military clique, TPLF, actually went completely against the constitution and all parts of the Ethiopian law. So it's a law enforcement operation to re-establish order and rule of law in the northern part of the country. But actually what TPLF did, they started since the beginning this ethnic narrative that the Tigrayans are under attack. It's same attacks against Tigray as it happened in the Mengistu era. They will come and kill everybody who is Tigrayans. And actually, according to my understanding, it was successful. So now Tigrayan people with whom I spoke all tell you that it's a war against us. If Abiy win, they will kill all Tigrayan people in the country. And actually, it was the big success of TPLF, because thanks to this narration, they managed to stoke these ethnic tensions, these ethnic killings. So now the war is, what we can know about this, and all its fragmented information, but very brutal. Each party committed human rights abuses, mass killings. I think the word of genocide is too politicized, but we can say mass killings happen. And you know, I had some discussion with people, and some of who try to negotiate, and you know, all says you that very hard to sit down people around a table if all of the hands are full of blood now. and human suffering in the country is really devastating.
But
So
from what you're saying, it will be very difficult to heal, you know, and to somehow, you know, put the things in order in one country after that.
Yeah, yes, and you know, I sorry, this is one line. I try to be quick. The second line is, it's not only the whole conflict. It's not only about Ethiopia, but it's a regional issue. The involvement of Eritreans by the government, you know, which must be done, because as Mersha mentioned, half of the army was previously Tigrayans, officers, non-commissioned officers, military members.
90%, not
Yeah, 90. You know, the army disappeared. You know, Abiy needed some support, and Eritrean was ready to come, but it was also a revenge by the Eritreans because of the military defeat of between the war 1908 and 2000. Now they came to make a revenge on the Tigrayans who defeated them in the battles. So this is why most killings actually in the north was not by Ethiopians against the civilians. It was done by Eritreans. But Abiy need them because other regional powers, you know, don't forget the whole Nile issue. There are many countries.
Dam, and the problem that Ethiopia wanted this dam to be created, and these
Yes, and
countries
many
above Sudan and Egypt were against it.
Yeah, and you know, there are rumors that not everybody is so upset because of this war, because it's very evident that in the last year the building of a dam was almost stopped because all efforts went to the war. And last but not least, the mediation of the foreign powers, not only the army, but the whole diplomatic corps of Ethiopia consisted of the member of the TPLF. And actually what happened, that the whole narration on the crisis in West and the Western media, what Eva mentioned, that it seems a strong pro-TPLF narration, was thanks to these facts that actually the Western diplomats, and it's very hard to understand how it was happened, but it happened, listened the whole narration from the TPLF side. And instead of the Western powers came to understand what's going on there, they started to push this TPLF narration that Abiy and the ENDF committed civil atrocities, poor TPLF guys are just under attack, how it can happen. You know, there is a tendency in general that always the central power is the who is committing and oppressing people, you know, always opposition, and they are the nice and poor guys. And you know, it was a disaster because all trust in Ethiopia in the West is over. And not for a year, for decades. And it's not accidental that what happened in Addis Ababa turned to Russia, China, Emirates, and other actors. And now Ethiopians said that all Westerns just leave the country, go home, forget us. Because they support a movement which is against the constitution. A movement which tried to mobilize 5% of the population against the 95% of the population, which tried to mobilize one ethnic groups against, as Eva mentioned, let's say 89 ethnic groups. And you know, Ethiopians don't understand what's going on. How it can happen that our friends support a rebel movement, which completely illegal, against the central government, and they are stoking tensions. Actually, what happened with this beginning diplomacy, that the West supported these rebels.
Okay, let me go back to Eva. Eva, would you agree that, I mean, Ethiopians don't really understand, I mean, how this happened, and what do you think would be the way out of this war? Because that's exactly what we are all, you know, expecting, that the war will end after over a year, and let's hope it will end even by this year. I mean, the end. They are the expectations. Do you think it's feasible?
The wish of all the Ethiopians is for the war to end as soon as possible, and from what I have from my contacts with Ethiopians in Ethiopia, they believe that like Ethiopians are very religious people, and they believe that God is in control, and they believe that it will end the best it could. So I don't have any scenarios for other than that.
But do you think the Ethiopian kind of statehood can be rebuilt after so many, so much of blood, how to say, lost during this war? Do you think these kind of tensions between now the people still give a chance for the community, for the society to heal after the war?
I think, as Mersha said, that there is no pure, pure ethnic blood. Ethiopians are very mixed people, so I think there is a chance of rebuilding. I think Ethiopia has a chance of rebuilding.
Mersha, so for you, the most important question is really, what are the scenarios to get out of the war? And what do you think it's really kind of realistic to expect?
Okay, the TPLF is in a deep grief to Abiy. When he actually overruled them, was chosen by democratically in the parliament. The second point which he did that they didn't like was he changed the Ethiopian money. As you know, if you have thousands of bags of banknotes in your garage, and all of a sudden the government announced a change of money, he is your enemy. This is one of the secret problem which nobody says about this. So the other thing is this problem. Let me tell you, when the TPLF government came, Ethiopians were very happy to get rid of this Mengistu, the dictator. Because every time a new government comes, people accept it, and they have that belief, that hope, maybe something good will change. So what came was totally different, and now most of the Ethiopians rejected this government. If, as I said it earlier, if a party loses power, the only thing it should do is bring something new to the people, some programs which is very acceptable, whatever, and come back to power if it gets. What TPLF did was he took the hidden guns and different army equipments and tried to fight with the government.
But
what
coming
I
back
see
to my
now,
question, what would be the way out of that?
Okay, the question is, I tell you, this question, this end of this conflict will not come to its end until Abiy gets either a peaceful giving hand of this TPLF group, or until he catches every TPLF member. That is it. No other choice. That's what I think. And actually, they declare it in different
ways. And in what way do you think the international community can help, if any?
No international community. Ethiopia doesn't need any international community. International community, as we observe it, they want to control the region. That is, they are interested, not the Ethiopian people. Nobody cares about it. Nobody.
And what about the neighbors, and what about the actors in Africa? Because African Union is an organization of African countries.
The good news. Okay, the good news is the Ethiopians say no more, and now all African nations are saying the same thing: no more colonialists, no more foreign invaders and robbers and whatever. This is in a good time. I think they will give a credit to Abiy's fight. Abiy showed modern leaders that when a problem comes against your land, you cannot sit in your palace. Go to that place and fight for it. That's why he went there, and he will not come back until he cleans the whole region. That's what I think. That was his plan, actually. So this is what all Ethiopians need. They have to clean, not kill them. I don't mean to kill all them. If they give hands and they surrender and come to peace, no problem. They will be judged according to the law. But if they want to fight, having those armaments hidden during their reign, Abiy will not come back to the palace. And
So-
this may take a month or 2, 3. That's what I think.
So the strong point is what I got from what you said is also that Ethiopians want to resolve this problem themselves. They don't want really
Exactly. Exactly, because as we heard, I didn't witness that. As we heard, when this charity aid food came to Tigrayan region, they had also some hidden electronic war equipments. So I wouldn't trust this aid, the so-called aid. Ethiopia doesn't need this kind of help.
And
Genuine help.
if I just may ask you one more question, Ethiopia was not really colonized, so the experience with the foreign powers are not as direct like in many other countries of the continent who are physically under the French or British or Belgian domination. How do you see this international kind of fora, and diplomatic solution, diplomatic efforts to help? Because we are not talking about only, Europeans or Americans wanting to, let's say, dominate. We are also thinking about organizations like United Nations, for example, like, all the diplomatic talks we could maybe engage somehow to try to mediate, try to solve the problem. You don't think it's helpful?
Yes, the problem is they tried. They asked the Ethiopian army to go back to Addis Ababa or to its places instead of fighting the TPLF in Tigray. They did that. That gave TPLF to get prepared again for the fight. So Ethiopia respects the international suggestion, proposition, and this was the time given to TPLF to get prepared and become ready for a fight. So how can you respect or trust such kind of proposition or help, the so-called help? So that's why that statement was said, no more, we don't need anything. I mean, the Ethiopians, they need peace. That peace comes, the only way is when TPLF stops fighting or it gives the problem away. And that I don't think TPLF as it dreams comes back to power. I don't think so, because Abiy did all necessary things until he started this problem. You have to remember, when he became the prime minister, the first weeks were terrible for him. He couldn't even order anyone, any soldier or anybody to do something. What he did was, he was totally controlled by the TPLF security people. When he wants to say to go to Somalia, they say, no, he cannot go there. He wants to go to Eritrea. No, that's impossible. That was his situation. Having 99% of the security, the military, Abiy couldn't do anything. Now I hope he's so intelligent, he did what should be done, and that's why he went out of his palace for this war.
Viktor, it would be my last question. Our conversation goes to an end. Again, I would like to ask about what should we do watching at this conflict? We meaning the European Union, also the international community as such. Mersha says very clearly they don't want really anyone to help them because they have to solve this problem in the country. Do you agree with that?
Unfortunately, the case is, as I mentioned earlier, that all trust in the Western actors, because of this behavior and approach to the conflict, is over now. And another problem is it's also clear that still TPLF and the government is committed to solve the whole issue by war. The only case could have been, and I think it's also the past, to make pressure, Security Council or I don't know what, on the different parties to sit down and make some negotiations. But now, to take us through, I think the best issue is the EU and Western actors a little bit step back. We should provide humanitarian aid. It's definitely because millions of people are already starving thanks to the war. And really, perhaps it's better if we let local organizations, the African Union, to make some negotiation between the parties. And if we really want to make more diplomatic, perhaps we should make very clean for TPLF that not an option in any separation. And if they don't go back and start the negotiation, because it's very important. What Mersha mentioned very important. Abiy made that June and May, ENDF, the Ethiopian National Defense Forces, left Tigray because it was everybody told him that you should leave Tigray to start the negotiation. And at one point, Abiy said, "Okay, we leave it." And what happened? Yes, it was clear. Tigray, TPLF came out and attacked Amara and Afar. So now it's the TPLF side to say, okay, we are going back, sit down negotiation. So actually, Western actors should make a pressure on TPLF if we want a diplomatic action to force them to sit down, to negotiate.
Thank you very much for this talk. Let's hope this conflict will be solved soon. It's a very complex story, but I believe our talk let us to understand a little bit better what's happening in Ethiopia. In Ethiopia, such an important country in the continent with such a long history of statehood and with such wonderful also things to see. Let's just hope that the peace will be there and we'll be able to continue the talk in a different circumstances. So thank you very much for your time. Eva Wołk-Sore, thank you, Eva. Viktor Marsai, thanks, Viktor, very much. And Mersha, Woldu, thank you all for your time. And my name is Małgorzata Bonikowska. See you, let's see, well, next year, actually, in January, and our next Zoom the World talks. Thank you, goodbye.